So the first section we saw so far is the first two verses, Krishna glorified the knowledge. Next two verses, 3 and 4, Krishna spoke how did the conditioned soul come in contact with the material nature. Then he spoke in verse 5, what happens when it comes to when the soul comes in contact with the material nature, it gets bound. And then in 6, 7, and 8, he explained the characteristics of the modes and their binding forces. And in 9, he summarized them. And in verse 10 to 18, he's going to explain the further effects of the material modes. Like when a person is actually in the material world, is it like one mode going to act, or is it all the three modes act on a person? So how do we understand this? What kind of mode is acting? I'm under. How do I recognize what is my mode? So is it like I'm influenced by all the three modes or one mode at a time? So how does it work? So that knowledge will be explained. And then we will also be seeing how Krishna explains what are the effects of material modes in the sense of living in material in a particular mode. What is the result of that? And dying in a particular mode, what are the results of that? So we will see that. So does one mode become prominent within a person? If these questions will be answered in this section. If so, how? And what are the signs to identify which mode one is predominantly in? And through the external manifestations the person displays, Krishna will explain that. So we will see one by one. So the theme of the verse 10 is that the modes actually compete with each other. They always coexist, but they don't cooperate. Sounds like what do you call, like Kanishta devotees, like neophyte devotees, like they coexist, but they don't cooperate, but actually compete. So similarly, the modes actually, they coexist, they don't cooperate, but rather they actually compete with each other. That sometimes how a particular mode affects a person at a particular time has so many factors involved. The first thing is our own karma. First, another thing, like external circumstances, like what time of the day it is. Is it a gloomy day? Is it a sunny day? Is it like night 12 p.m. or at afternoon 12? Like is it like 12 p.m. in the afternoon or like 12 a.m. at night? What kind of time? What kind of place we are? Is it like in a forest? Are we in a club, or we are at a temple? So modes actually decide, like there are various factors that decides what kind of mode that we will be influenced by and we will be acting by. So there are many factors involved in that. However, in general, they are competing with each other. At a particular given point of time, there is one mode which is predominantly more than other modes. So that's what Srila Prabhupada Krishna also explains here, that sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, then naturally other two modes go down. So basically there is 100% capacity. The maximum capacity is 100. So if this mode occupies 90, then other modes will divide between 10. So something like that. So the maximum is only capacity is 100, say for example. Within these three modes, that 100 will be divided. So at any given point of time, these modes are competing with each other. So they struggle to dominate each other. How? Because if one is actually, Prabhupada says, if one is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness, one has to transcend the modes, because otherwise they'll keep tossing us between them. We will be like the ball and they'll be playing football with us. Like it is the mode of goodness holding on to us sometime, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So we'll be constantly overcome by this one of these modes. And then we'll not be able to perform what we want to. We'll be just pushed through those modes. That's what Prabhupada is saying, one has to transcend if he wants to advance in Krishna consciousness. And it does happen. This is a commentary point. Some other commentary like Madhurya Kadamini, like it says, like in the mode of Nishtha, a person completely overcomes mode of passion and ignorance. And on the stage of Ruchi or Bhava, I'm not sure, that a person actually overcomes even mode of goodness also. He transcends mode of goodness also. So it does happen. If that's why Prabhupada is saying, if one is intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness, if someone wants to go from Anartha Nivritti to Nishtha, then conquering mode of ignorance and passion is very important for us to make that jump from Anishtita Bhajan to Nishtita Bhajan. Means Anishtita Bhajan is unstable devotional service. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives so many signs, like how We follow sometimes very strictly vows, and sometimes we don't follow it at all. Sometimes we are very enthusiastic to perform devotional activities. Sometimes we are not so enthusiastic, and even a little praise or little good things happens through us, then we try to take more credits, and we are just floating in that. So in this way, there are many signs of unstable devotion service. So there is, the main thing is, it's not continuous, it's not stable, it is not regulated, and the sign of mode of goodness is actually regulated. So that is why it is not just mode of goodness. Passion and ignorance can be overcome just by our own contemplation or anything like the Jnana Yoga. Here the idea is a person keeps engaging in devotional service with an unflinching faith, because he has received instructions from the spiritual master. Because of that continuous engagement in devotional service, gradually the lower modes will disappear, and a person can understand he is coming to the stage of Nishta when those modes influence are reducing. And Krishna also speaks in the, like Shukadeva Goswami speaks in Bhagavatam, Tada rajastamo bhava kamaloba yacche chete eterana vidam sitam sattve prasidati. He says, Tada rajastamo bhava, at the stage of Nishta, rajo, tada rajastamo bhava, rajo and tama, they actually go away. And sitam sattve prasidati means the person becomes situated in mode of goodness, like externally speaking. And Cheteretarana vidam stitam sattva prasidati means his mind becomes cheter, his mind becomes very clear from the influence of the modes of passion and ignorance. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is here writing, if somebody is intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness, one has to transcend the modes completely. But Prabhupada will also say how to transcend the modes. It's not that one person transcends the modes from mode of ignorance only. He lives whole life mode of ignorance and is attached to it and gives an excuse of devotion service. It does not work like that. So Prabhupada says first a person has to give up the lower modes and then come to mode of goodness, and eventually give up that mode also and go beyond. So Vasudeva state, Prabhupada says, the state of pure goodness where one can understand the science of God. How to identify the modes is the other topic in this whole section. So depending on the characteristics mentioned in 14:1 to 13, like next three verses that we are going to see, 11, 12, and 13, those three verses will give us the characteristics of a person who's predominantly in a particular mode. So using those, we can judge ourselves which mode we are at a given particular point of time. So Prabhupada writes, these modes will manifest in one's dealings, in his activities, in eating, etc. So through which one can understand what is this predominant mode. Prabhupada also writes, by the manifestation of particular activities, it can be understood in what mode of nature one is situated. So we will see the next three verses to understand those manifestations. What are they? Here is the nice paragraph from Prabhupada's purport. So I haven't cut. I have put the whole thing here. It's so nice. If one wants, he can develop by practice the mode of goodness and thus defeat the mode of ignorance and passion. So Prabhupada is saying it is possible. By practice, one can actually develop mode of goodness. The same, he says, one can similarly develop mode of passion and defeat goodness or ignorance, or with ignorance, goodness and passion. So although these are, there are these three modes of material nature, if one is determined, he can be blessed by the mode of goodness. So what is the qualification to go to mode of goodness? One needs to be determined to actually become regulated in his devotional service. And by transcending the modes, he can be situated in pure goodness, which is called Vasudeva state, a state in which one can understand the science of God. So with determination, when we practice our devotional service in a regulated way, that actually as a byproduct keeps us in mode of goodness. And eventually through the practice of bhakti, we will be going beyond the mode of goodness also. In verse 11, we are going to discuss about the manifestations or symptoms of mode of goodness. So the translation is, the manifestation of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. The first question that comes to my mind is, what do you mean by gates of the body? Gates of the body are actually the senses. Eyes, ears, nose, all the openings like skin pores. These are all considered gates of the body. So the manifestation of the mode of goodness will be experienced in those senses. So senses are like matter, how can you understand like this is, how can like the matter, like eyes be infused with knowledge, or like ears be infused with knowledge? So the understanding is given. What do you mean by, what do you actually mean when we say senses are illuminated with knowledge? Because the senses usually does not have a mind of their own, to, so to say. Yes. So the eyes are matter. They don't like, they just process things. They, it's like seeing through a telescope or like seeing through a microscope. The eyes in it themselves don't have any attachment to any object or anything, but it is the mind which sees through the eyes. It is the intelligence which sees through the eyes, and based on what we like, say we like a certain kind of food, and when it comes before our eyes, we have a certain emotion. So the mind sees with a different energy when it sees what it likes, and it sees with a different energy when it, what it does not like. It's not about the eyes. So eyes don't know what to look at and what to not to look at. It's the mind which decides what to do with the impulses coming through those senses. However, when we say of the senses will be illuminated with knowledge, that means the intelligence is actually purified, the mind is also purified. So mind naturally, when it is under control of the intelligence, the senses are also under control. So when the intelligence looks through those senses, it only sees things for what it is. A mode of goodness person will look at an alcohol bottle and think, oh, this is not good for health. So his senses are illuminated in that sense. His eyes are seeing, but it is seeing the thing for what it is. So that is called illuminated with knowledge. When he listens to a certain thing, he feels, oh, this is not good to hear. So that means the senses are the same, but it becomes illuminated with knowledge because the intelligence is purified. So that is what is called as like the senses are illuminated with knowledge. The sense perception is based on knowledge. If the intelligence is purified, then it influences the mind and keeps the mind under control, and the mind keeps the senses under control. So this is the understanding of that word. And Srila Prabhupada purport points, Prabhupada says, if somebody is in the mode of goodness, he is clean inside out. Like he is internally also clean. That is, his heart is clean, his thoughts are clean, his words are clean. Externally also, his words and actions are also clean. And every sense develops the symptom of happiness. The senses usually also, sometimes you can see they itch for something. Sometimes you feel like you want to eat something, you want to see something, you want to hold on to something. So you feel like the senses are speaking their own language of like, they, as if they are just trying to pull us. So however, when a person is mode of goodness, they actually develop a symptom of happiness. They become very satisfied. They are much controlled. That is why it's shamena sadamena. They're kind of like pacified. They're not like making us go crazy. So in the mode of goodness, illumination is the result of knowledge. Because the person has knowledge, that is causing illumination. And because there is happiness, there is satisfaction. That is the nature of real happiness, even materially speaking. If a person says, I'm so happy, we need to ask ourselves, like, am I like, I feel very happy. Am I also satisfied? Because most of the times, mundane happiness leaves us asking for more, like leaving us like hankering for more. So that is not like, that is a sign it's not real happiness. So that's why Krishna says, Yehi samsparshaja boga dukkha yone evate adi antavanta kvanteya nateshu ramate bodha. He says in the 5th chapter, Yehi samsparshaja boga. That's why the connection between the senses and the sense objects of this world is not actually real cause of happiness, because they leave us wanting for more, so that they become actually a seed of misery, because they are not satisfied. So the satisfied means they'll push us to engage again and again. That's why there is addiction problem in this world of all sorts. It's not that once a person takes drugs and feels happy and then he's satisfied and never to take again. No, want to again take it, because it cannot give a sustaining eternal happiness by its experience. It can only give some temporary feeling. So you have to go again to create that. And every time you go, there is no guarantee that the same experience will be actually manifesting also. So this is the nature of mode of goodness. Again, we are seeing that how illumination is the result of knowledge, satisfaction is the result of happiness. In the verse 12, we will be seeing the symptoms of mode of passion. So Krishna says, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. So Krishna says, like, there is no satisfaction in mode of passion. That is the difference between mode of passion and mode of goodness. There is work in both the modes. There is kind of happiness in both the modes. But the striking difference between the two modes is one leaves the person satisfied, the other leaves the person hankering for more. So that's why it causes attachment to sense gratification and no end to the hankering and attachment. So this is the sign of mode of passion. This is the clear effect that a person is hankering and for more and more sense enjoyment, no satisfaction. The symptoms of the mode of ignorance manifestation is that knowledge is absent. So what do we mean by knowledge is absent? Knowledge is absent means there is most of the times in mode of ignorance, knowledge is absent means it's not that there is no knowledge. The knowledge they have is the opposite of true knowledge. That is what we call misunderstood knowledge or opposite. Like that's what is called as ignorance. Ignorance is one thing is not knowing, but the other thing is whatever is the conclusion is opposite to the real conclusion. So that is why it is called knowledge is absent in mode of ignorance. The lazy and not guided by regulative principles, but one's own whims. So they don't take regulative principle given by Guru or Shastra very seriously. They think it's like it's controlling them unnecessarily. So they want to be free. So they want to act however they want to act. So that is mode of ignorance. And then there is illusion, that is opposite of knowledge, opposite of reality. So these are the manifestations that we saw. That is like in the verse 11, we saw about mode of goodness manifestation. So it is basically illuminating with knowledge and happiness. And verse 12 is no satisfaction, hankering more, that is passion. Ignorance is there is no knowledge. There is little knowledge in passion, but it is used for selfish purposes. But there is no knowledge at all in mode of ignorance. It causes laziness and illusion. So now we saw the second section from verses 10 to 18. Within that, we saw the first subsection, verses 10 to 13, discussing about the manifesting symptoms of a particular mode, that how they are competing. So when one of them become prominent, when mode of goodness become prominent, the person feels a sense of illumination, knowledge, happiness, satisfaction. When a mode of ignorance is prominent, he feels no satisfaction, he wants more, and he is so miserable working for that. And the third, when mode of ignorance manifests predominantly in a person, there is absent of true knowledge, or there is no good knowledge, and there is laziness, illusion, madness, inertia, all these things manifesting in that person. So these are the symptoms, how to identify in what mode a particular person is at a given point of time or in general in life. So now the next section, subsection within this, that is verses 14 to 15. It's going to speak about what are the results of dying in a particular mode. Okay, if a person predominantly lives in mode of goodness, what happens after his death? What if a person lives predominantly in mode of passion and dies? So something like that. So here, yada sattve prabhudetu pralayam yati dehabhrut tadotama vidam lokan amalan pratipadyate. So Krishna says the destination of those who live and die in mode of goodness is higher planetary systems. Higher planetary system means above Swarga, above heavenly planets, Tapaloka, Janaloka, Maharaloka, and Satyaloka. These are the places where there are sages who practice spiritual life, Jnana Yoga, and all these processes. They live there. So Amalan means, Prabhupada says, it is free from modes of passion and ignorance. It's not pure. It's a relatively pure. So Prabhupada says, mode of goodness is the purest form of existence in material world. So this is the result of death in mode of goodness, that one achieves higher planetary systems. What is the result of death in mode of passion and ignorance is discussed in verse 15. So verse 15 says, when a person in mode of passion dies, he remains in the earthly planets, within the earthly realm in the middle planetary system. And destination for mode of ignorance, a person who is dying in mode of ignorance is birth in lower species. So these are the results of living and dying, especially, which is a result of living, of course. Prabhupada says aim of human life is to situate oneself in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada says take to mode of goodness, take to good association, gradually transcend all the three modes. He says situate yourself in Krishna consciousness. While trying to situate oneself in Krishna consciousness, one need to develop mode of goodness. And with good devotee association, he can gradually transcend all the three modes. So in this way, a person can avoid all these going to different destinations. Rather, he can go to Krishna if he takes to bhakti. So the last section of this particular verses, 16 to 18, speaks about the result of living in a particular mode. Okay, we know after death this happens. But while living, if a person is actually predominantly in a particular mode, while living, what does he experience? So the verse 16 speaks about the nature of the results of action. What if a person acts in mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance? What does come of that action? So the result of pious action is pure, because that's the nature of piety, and it's said to be in the mode of goodness. But action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. Okay, I see Rohan Prabhu's hand. We will take the question first and then go in here. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Just
Hare
a
Krishna.
small question. When we talk of the planets of the sages and people who have lived a life in the mode of goodness, but we also saw that there's always competition amongst the modes, right? So, like we see the case of Daksha Prajapati. So he was living a life in the mode of goodness, but then pride took over and he ended up insulting Lord Shiva. So he fell down. So, so in those planetary systems, is it not a risky life? Like, because there's always competition amongst the modes, and ignorance and passion might defeat goodness. So, yeah.
So yes, true. There is always this competition, and there is no safe place in the material world. However, there are some details in the example that you gave about Daksha, because Daksha is not in mode of goodness in that sense. He is more of passion, and Prajapati is like a progenitor, mode of passion, which degenerates to ignorance, where he tries to cause trouble to Lord Shiva by cursing and sending a demon and all that. No, sorry, Lord Shiva sends, of course. So what I was saying is, for Daksha, it is more of mode of passion and ignorance. The example may not be apt for the concept that you're trying to explain, but it's true. In these particular higher planetary systems, the thing is, like, they're all mostly inhabited by Mahartava, Jana, Tapa, and Satya. They're all mostly like inhabited by people who are practicing these Jnana yoga systems, like sages who are like unfinished, but they are more in mode of passion. They are more dedicated towards knowing the truth of life. So there is more sense of spirituality in those planets. So if you read second canto, there is Krama Mukti, and there is all these topics that Shukadeva Goswami explains to Parikshit Maharaj, where even those who are living with Brahmaji, so only those people who actually take to bhakti will live with Brahmaji when the universe is destroyed, like that. So in these higher planetary systems, there are chances, more and more chances of engaging in spiritual pursuit. Whereas, like, if you see below that, there is Svargaloka and other places, which is predominantly for enjoying. That is where that is a person whose piety may be there, but there is like a strong rajasic attitude. So that's where the people will land up with Swarga and planetary, other planet, in these planets, Swarga planets. And then ignorance is, of course, lower planetary systems. And those who are like just predominantly passion, but does not have enough piety to take birth in Swarga planet, will always be taking birth within the earthly planetary systems. So to the question that you asked, yes, there is none of these places are safe. But if a person has developed a mode of goodness while living here, and if he has not practiced bhakti, he has not aspired for like bhakti as such, then he just qualifies to go to these higher planetary systems at the max, but he cannot get out of the material world. That's the point. Did I answer your question, Prabhu?
Yes.
Sure. Hare.
Hare.
So in the verse 16, so the result of pious action is said to be pure, and the result of mode of passion, the action in mode of passion is misery, and action performed in mode of ignorance results in foolishness. So we have kind of seen these things already, like how mode of goodness leads to pious actions and purity, and passion leads to misery, and ignorance leads to foolishness. So now verse 17 will describe about the resulting symptoms due to action in three modes. Now a person is acting like that. What is the symptoms in his personality that we will see? So the person who's in the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. In his personality, you will see manifestation of knowledge. And in the person who is in mode of passion, acting in mode of passion, you will see this person is becoming more and more greedy. He becomes greedy for acquiring material things and sense enjoyment. And a person who is predominantly working in the mode of ignorance, we will see that person becomes like foolish, completely illusioned, completely mad. So that's what is the result of predominantly working in mode of ignorance. So this is the result that manifests in this person's personal activities. How does Krishna conscious help? Prabhupada says, how can Krishna conscious help in this scenario if these people are like constantly troubled by these modes? He says one will develop the, what will Krishna conscious do? Because Krishna consciousness will develop mode of goodness in this society. Because from there knowledge comes. Why Prabhupada is throwing this angle at the purport? He's saying Krishna conscious can help in this situation because there is mode of ignorance and passion in the modern world so much. If people practice Krishna conscious, they will naturally come to mode of goodness, and people will see things as they are, and they will not do dangerous things. So he says in mode of ignorance, a person is irresponsible. He does not see things as they are because there is no education. So Prabhupada thinks, Prabhupada quotes an example of animal killing. How a person without awareness is killing other living entity for his food, and he's going to be implicated more karmically later in his future lives. How to stop irresponsible activities and benefit the current civilization, Prabhupada writes, by educating. So education is a part of mode of goodness. So he's saying educate people and make them sober and let them know what things as they are. But somebody may say, okay, not everybody is going to be interested in taking to education. Literally, Prabhupada is indirectly saying make people into brahmanas. But the natural understanding is not everybody is going to be interested in taking knowledge. Prabhupada writes a nice statement. He says, even if a small percentage of the people develop Krishna conscious and become situated in the mode of goodness, he says there will be peace and prosperity all over the world. Because these are all devotees who will be on the Nishta platform. So he says even a certain percentage of people actually advance Krishna consciousness, go beyond Kanishta, if they become Madhyamadhikaris. And see the nature of Madhyamadhikari is like he has Prema Maitri Kripa Upeksha. We already saw in Nectar of Instruction and Devotion. So he's loving to the Lord, he's loving the Lord, he respects the seniors, he's friendly with equals, and he's merciful to juniors. So because of this proper behavior with people in general, he will be able to make many people favorable to Krishna consciousness. So that's why Prabhupada is saying even if a small percentage of people come to that level of mode of goodness while practicing bhakti, that means they can bring peace and prosperity all over the world through their Krishna conscious outreach. Under passion, Prabhupada says there will be no peace and prosperity. People cannot think just by advancing materially through mode of passion, they'll be peaceful. He says, no, mode of passion makes one greedy and unlimitedly hankering for sense enjoyment. So Prabhupada says, even if one has money, he will neither be happy nor have peace of mind. Because under the mode of passion, his profession and occupation are very troublesome. Just the nature of work has sometimes become so troublesome. So even if the work is giving money, still the person will not be happy. So Prabhupada is saying the disadvantages of working in mode of passion, how it does not make one satisfied. And in ignorance, it makes one go mad, like gets addicted to intoxications and sinks further down from material, from human life. So in this way, if you see in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is discussing what is the problem with mode of ignorance, what is the problem with mode of passion. And he is saying how Krishna consciousness can help because he's not speaking about mode of goodness. He did not say, okay, let's take to mode of goodness. He's saying, no, practice Krishna consciousness. As a byproduct, you will manifest mode of goodness. Because of that, we will benefit, the world will benefit. And eventually we will be able to transcend that mode of goodness also. He's not explicitly saying develop mode of goodness. So Prabhupada has like a super thought process in writing that purport. Like he presents what is the problem with ignorance, what is the problem with passion, and he brings in bhakti straight. So this is to keeping in conclusion of, keeping in track with the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. It's not that we are going to, okay, understand the modes like the Jnana Yoga process or anything. Just practice bhakti. You will gradually, and this knowledge from Bhagavad Gita is part of bhakti only. So knowing these three modes will help us become very cautious when we have to deal with the world. Oh, this is mode of passion. When we become greedy, when we become like hankering, or when we are like being influenced by these modes based on these symptoms, we can judge ourselves and we can see, okay, how can I develop more mode of goodness? So Prabhupada is saying, practice Krishna conscious determination. With determination, if one practices the instructions of one spiritual master, naturally makes a person situate in mode of goodness. And the process of bhakti will also help the person go beyond mode of goodness. I hope this is clear. So verse 18, this verse is going to speak about the destination. Now this person has been acting in his life predominantly in mode of goodness. So in the verse 16, we saw what are his actions, like what is the result of acting in mode of goodness. What is the result of acting in mode of goodness?
Satisfaction and
satisfaction, happiness, purity, and knowledge, all these things. And if this person is actually, what is manifesting in his personality is knowledge. That's what we saw in knowledge and happiness in 17. And in 18, we are seeing where this person is going towards. Because when we are predominantly in a mode of goodness, in our everyday lives, we will manifest certain behavior. But what happens after this life? That's what is discussed in this, which is already shown in the previous verses 14 and 15. Here it's like kind of clarified. Urdhvam gacchanti sattvastha madhye tishtanti rajasa jaganya gunavrittistha adho gacchanti tamasa. There is word gacchanti used for tamo and sattvagun. Sattvagun upwards, tamogun downwards, and rajogun same position, no change. So according to the degree of goodness, one can go to different upper planetary systems, Jana, Mahar, Tapa, Satya. Passion is usually mixed between goodness and ignorance. So mostly people end up staying. Even if they temporarily go, they again go maximum to heavenly planets, but they will have to come back to earthly planetary systems. Because heavenly planet is more like a retreat. You go for a short vacation and you get back to your grind. So that's what is Swarga planetary systems. You have some excessive piety that you win a lottery, you have some credits from your like purchase of certain things. So you get like these bonus cards, gift cards. So heavenly planet is more like that. You have some extra accrued punya. So you go spend that and come back to your original position, which is the heavenly, earthly planetary systems. So even if pure passion, Prabhupada says, even if a person is like 100% pure passion, he has worked. So he's not having any ignorance or goodness. Still one remains on earth at the max as a king or a rich man. In these terms, today it will be like president of a nation or a CEO of a corporate. They are the kings and rich men today. So otherwise they may go down. If they are like not careful, they can go down, which is very true. People in these ages with huge money, they're demons. They actually commit so many sinful activities, and their money is only going to take them. Like I'm speaking about like corporates, greedy corporates who actually like make people's life miserable and make the world much worse than what it is or what it was made. So these people actually they are actually going down to mode of ignorance personally, and they take millions of people along. That's their power. So one cannot forcibly go to higher planetary systems. Prabhupada says, with mode of passion, one cannot force. We know the story of Trishanku. He was like forcibly trying to be taken by Vishwamitra and he got stuck. So mode of ignorance, Prabhupada says this is the lowest of the quality of the three modes. So the result is very risky because the mode of ignorance makes a person go into lower species of life. Prabhupada says it's very, very unfortunate to have human life and then miss it and go to a lower form of life, because there is no guarantee when this person will again come to human form of life. It may take a long time. So according to the degree one comes to any of the 8 million species. And Prabhupada says, Tamasaha, Jaganya Gunavrittisa Adogachanti Tamasa. So those who continue to stay in ignorance without rising to the higher modes have a very dark future. And Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness is the system and opportunity to elevate to higher mode of goodness. So he has a certain language. He's not saying come to mode of goodness. So he's saying Krishna consciousness is the system and opportunity to elevate to higher mode of goodness. You don't need to do anything separately. Just practice what Prabhupada has already given, along with chanting and hearing and remembering and Krishna, pleasing Krishna. With a Krishna-focused, regulated devotional life will bring us more, both mode of goodness as well as beyond mode of goodness.